What's going on, everybody? Welcome in to another installment of Talking Huskers. I am here to preview the Rutgers game with, as you see, I'm joined by Aaron Brightman from the Scarlet Faithful. So, Aaron, let me go ahead and just open it up to you. You can tell people where they can find you, what you got going on, and yeah, just kind of give them a little more info on what's going on your end.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Justin. Obviously, big game this weekend, but I have a daily podcast, The Scarlet Faithful, on all major platforms: Spotify, Apple, YouTube. I also do some other videos on my YouTube channel, some analysis, highlights, all the press conferences, things like that. So certainly, I've been covering Rutgers sports for almost a decade now, and an alum, and been a fan for longer than I will admit in dating myself on this episode. But yeah, it's exciting time to be a Rutgers fan, and obviously excited for this matchup on Saturday.
Absolutely, and links will be in the description to his stuff. So, but Aaron, I guess we can just open it up right there. What is the overall feeling in the Rutgers fan base overall, and kind of how they're feeling going into this game against Nebraska?
Yeah, well, it's pretty funny actually. I mean, expectations are certainly high with this team. You have so many returning starters from last year. It's the fifth year for Greg Schiano 2.0. And after the breakthrough of last year, finally getting back to a bowl game for the first time in 9 years, a pretty impressive win against Miami in that bowl game. Top 10 Miami now. Obviously, they were missing some players that left before that bowl game, but still, for a program that in the Big East for many years, lost to Miami year after year after year. That's really been kind of the theme of the Greg Schiano 2.0 era. As we kind of move up the ranks in the Big Ten, is they've been able to beat teams that beat them for many years in the Big East that are now in the ACC. Back-to-back years now with Virginia Tech, Miami in the bowl game last year, Boston College, Syracuse. So there's a certain step that the program's made as a whole in the context of the fan base being now in the Big Ten. Obviously, Big Ten fans know Rutgers is kind of the bottom of the barrel for a long time.
Oh yeah.
Couldn't keep things together post Schiano with Kyle Flood and then Chris Ash. But as a fan base, we have a lot of hope now. Greg Schiano is doing exactly what we expected him to do in his return, and there's a true identity to this program. There's stability with the coaching staff, with the roster. All their top players came back. No one entered the transfer portal and left for NIL, which is pretty remarkable in this day and age. And it's just been refreshing to see that the rest of the Big Ten's kind of giving them the respect that we think they deserve now. And they win a certain way. It's not pretty always. We can get into the last couple of weeks and how they've won. But going into this game, I mean, fans are definitely hopeful. I think pretty realistic in the sense of Rutgers is going to have to play their best game of the season to come out a winner in this game, but certainly a tremendous opportunity. And I've been saying it, they're a good team that has a chance to have a great season based on their schedule, based on the veteran team they have. So this is obviously a step in that direction. I think it's the second most difficult game left on their schedule this year. So certainly, if they can go in and win in Lincoln, that would just be a huge boost for their ceiling and the rest of this year.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's another thing is just, coming into the season, I had Rutgers predicted as Nebraska's first loss. Now it was, for me, it was a lot of, what I saw against Illinois. I just the physicality with a true freshman quarterback. Like, what does he do when he gets roughed up? He gets hit a few times. I wanted to see him respond to that. But partially, I think the Illinois game was a good game to get on film for us to prepare us a little bit for Rutgers. So, when it comes to just looking at Rutgers' overall team, and you mentioned you had seen my offensive breakdown, but, what is it about Ethan Kaliakmanis especially, but just kind of overall how the offense operates that's been able to, while they may not put up a ton of yards, 299 yards in the last game, 7 for 15 on third down. It's little things like that where it's like it's not going to look sexy, but you go deeper in the box score, and there are fundamental things that contribute to the winning. What is it about this offense that allows it to be so successful while at the same time being fairly limited?
Yeah, well, just being more efficient in the short to intermediate passing game has been a major plus for this team. Obviously, last year with Gavin Wimsatt, that was the big piece that was missing for the offense, and it really held the team back. He had some really positive attributes. Rutgers fans really thought there was a chance he could turn the corner. And then they brought in Nathan Kaliakmanis, who offensive coordinator Kirk Shiraka uh, recruited to Minnesota, played for him for 2 years, and it was pretty clear at that point that it was going to be tough for Wimsatt to beat him out. And it just seemed like he could not get over his accuracy struggles. Threw for barely, 50% his first year and under 50% last year. You just can't win football games consistently with a quarterback like that. Kaliakmanis came in, won the job to Greg Schiano's credit, made the call right after the spring game, allowed Gavin Wimsatt to transfer. He's now the backup at Kentucky. Actually fumbled in the winning score against Ole Miss this weekend.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, that's right.
yeah, pretty wild. But in terms of Kaliakmanis, he's just brought in terms of his efficiency in short passing downs or passing plays and intermediate. He's right around 70% for the year in short to intermediate, which is a huge dramatic difference from last year. And I think it's
Yep.
allowed Kirk Shiraka. They do have better playmakers with their wide receivers, tight end, which we can get into. And obviously, Kyle Monungai is back at running back, but it just makes them a little bit more unpredictable. They're throwing more on first down. Last year, teams could just load up 8 in the box and not worry about the pass game at all.
Yeah.
So it's giving them another dynamic in that regard. And that Kaliakmanis, he does have big game experience. Nebraska fans know him well. He's won at Wisconsin. He was really efficient at Virginia Tech for Rutgers. He's been asked more to be a game manager, but he's been very efficient. He doesn't turn it over. He's got one interception all year. He does have, I think, better legs than people give him credit for. It's really going to come down to, I think, as the season goes, his decision making in that RPO in terms of reading defenses the right way. He's
Mhm.
made a few mistakes in that regard, but I think it's just kind of a feel thing. He's getting more used to that in this offense. But overall, Kaliakmanis has been a huge addition to this team. And certainly, I think, is going to be a key part of their success, but also their ability to win in Nebraska this weekend.
Yeah, he's not losing them games, and that's the biggest thing. He hasn't turned the ball over. Like you said, he's efficient when he needs to be. So I think that's exactly why Shiroka brought him over, because he saw those things. Kalik Manis was always a talented quarterback, but it's just like he wasn't developing and he didn't show the promise that they thought he had coming in. And but Shiroka saw that in him, and clearly he knew he was the perfect quarterback to come over and kind of run this offense. So you had mentioned the tight end, but there's one person specifically I wanted to talk about before I get into kind of your key players on offense. But we talk about Kyle Monungai, but how important do you think Samuel Brown might be in this game? Because he's kind of, it's a little bit of a 1-2 punch. And while he wasn't great last year, the year before, he's really kind of almost turned a corner, it seems, this year. And that could be due to the fact that they have a little bit of a passing game as well. But what do you think Samuel Brown will be as far as his impact in this game?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think his development as a reliable number two now in terms of what he's done this season. He had a season-ending injury his freshman year. He's a former four-star. He started to emerge 2 years ago. He had over 100 yards against Indiana in a win, but tore his ACL in that, or had a foot injury in that game, and was out well into the start of last season. And he really wasn't himself. He worked his way back towards the end of the season. You saw in the bowl game against Miami, he was starting to get back to normal. And then he had a full off season of development time now, and he really looks better than ever this year. He's very physical. He carries it a little bit higher. He was literally bounced off a Washington defender with really no problem on that
Yep.
touchdown run last week. So yeah, him and Monungai, it's really a luxury to have two backs of that quality. I think that, also it's going to allow Rutgers to kind of keep Monungai a little bit fresher as the year
Yep.
goes on. You saw the wear and tear that took on him in November last year. And then when he had that month off, he came back in the bowl game and he was dominant. So I think, Monungai is a little bit more elusive. He likes to kind of be a little more hesitant, wait for things to open up in the run game, where Sam Brown can just, get the ball and just go. So I think the two different styles. And one thing Rutgers needs to do as the schedule gets harder is to be able to deliver body blows throughout the game, and to be able to wear teams down in the fourth quarter. And ironically, in the two games they've won against Virginia Tech and Washington, they haven't really done that. So it's good.
Yeah.
I think for them to be able to do that, Brown is key for sure, as a 1-2 punch with Monangai.
Yeah, yeah, and to your point, yeah, looking at kind of the Washington, time of possession, it was very even in that regard, but, Washington came out with over 500 yards, but it's the little things Rutgers does to not beat themselves that wins them those games for sure. But yeah, Samuel Brown and Monangai, you got Monangai at 5'9", 209, so he's just complete wrecking ball, but then you have Samuel Brown at 6'1", 220, 220 between 220 and 225. So it's a interesting combination there, but a very, very physical combination that can wear down a defense very easily. So now moving on to just kind of what you were talking about earlier, just can you tell me some other offensive skill player positions that you think are key in this game specifically?
Yeah, so I mean, I really think that if Rutgers is going to win this game, as important as Monangai and Brown are, they're going to have some big plays in the pass game. And the receiving core is certainly improved. They have Demir Miller, who was a FCS All American at Monmouth last year. He can really move around. They've been playing him a lot in the slot, but they've been getting him on quick hits. He can yards after catch, after contact. He's not huge, but pretty fast, tough kid. And then you have Ian Strong, who is a true sophomore, emerged a little bit as a freshman. He had that touchdown catch, went up and got it against Washington. He has big playability. He also had that 60-plus yard pass play against Virginia Tech that got them in field goal position to win the game. He's a bigger receiver and has really good hands. So the two of them have been key in the pass game. Chris Long is their deep threat. He hasn't done much in the last couple of games, but if Rutgers is going to go deep, looking to get a big hit, it's probably to Chris Long, who has really good speed. He's coming off an injury from last year. And then a new element that they haven't had in a long time is at tight end. Kenny Fletcher, converted defensive lineman, has been tremendous in the pass game, short passing game. He really has a gift in terms of he's very seamless in terms of catching and running. As a tight end, he's working his way as a blocker, and they've had to compensate for that a little bit. But he really has given Kyle McManus a safety valve in that pass game, short passing game, and really has helped that Rutgers in terms of keeping themselves out of third and long situations. Just being able to dump off to Fletcher, who's able to catch and go and get them 4 or 5 yards in a flash. He did have a fumble against Virginia Tech, which was a little bit of a setback, but he bounced back pretty well and is leading them in catches this year. So certainly a target to look for. But I think those four guys have to be involved in this game. Kyle McManus is going to have to connect on some intermediate to deep passes to be able to stretch the Nebraska defense that's so good at stopping the run. Rutgers can't just line it up and run it 40 times against them and expect to win.
Yeah, no doubt. And I guess we can slide over to the defensive side of the ball. Touching on that, one of the things that I've noticed about Rutgers, of course, like people look at the Washington box score and see the 500 yards. This is a completely different team again between the 20s than they are in the red zone, though. I think they have the second best red zone defense, but also, Washington and Virginia Tech are a combined 7 for 24 on third down. I think they do a good job of just keeping the plays in front of them, bringing as many people to the ball as possible because their tackling hasn't graded out the best. They have missed, some tackles in the Washington game, but it seems like they always have somebody near the ball on help, right? So I think that limits a lot of those plays being broken for a touchdown, a lot of the yards after catch. Do you think there's an element to a game plan or something that's making them successful in that regard of just, because my prognosticate, like my guess on this is that Rutgers doesn't have a ton of team speed, so they're limited. We're in a spread them out offense type of world, where it's speed all over the field. But when they get tighter in that box, that's when they're really able to shine and their defense is able to operate. in a much more tight, confined space where they don't have to rely on a lot of that speed. So, what's your take overall on kind of the overall look of the defense this year?
Yeah, so the dynamic changed when Motoré was lost for the season before
Yeah.
in August. He's their best player. I thought he was their best player last year. He had missed. He led them in sacks for 2 years. Missed a year with an ACL. Came back last year. Was dominant. They were able to move him around in ways. He's a linebacker, but they were able to line him up on the edge. He really gave the defense a different dynamic that they don't have without him. In combination, you lost Deion Jennings, multi-year starter at linebacker, and then Tyreen Powell, the other starter at linebacker, had a season-ending injury last year, hurt himself in January again with an Achilles, and just got back for the Virginia Tech game. So linebacker was very inexperienced early on. They're still working their way in terms of alongside Powell, but the defense had to adjust. And I think while they have a lot of playmakers back, Wesley Bailey's another one. He's coming off an injury. Flip Dixon, probably their second best defender last year. He's working his way back. He's played the last couple games, but he was banged up earlier in the year. So I think it's a combination of them getting healthy, but also kind of learning how to play without Teray a little bit. Their defensive line, it's struggled in terms of getting consistent pressure. And I think you touched on it well in terms of the Washington game. And I talked about this in my own podcast with David Anderson, a regular contributor for me, is it felt like it was very strategic in while they weren't successful in the pressure in terms of getting to Will Rogers, they were able to direct him to make plays and throws that they intended him to do in terms of how they had their support set up. So even though they missed 14 tackles in that game, a lot of the missed tackles led to a tackle right after. It
Yeah.
wasn't an open space that, they were really trying
They
to
weren't
prevent.
breaking much. Yeah. They weren't
Right.
breaking much off the missed tackles. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so they had one big play they gave up, that 51-yard touchdown, and that was a mistake. The freshman Kaj Sanders, who's getting a lot of time, who has a ton of potential. But overall, they were able to kind of predict where Rodgers would go with it based on the pressure they were sending. And even though they weren't, they didn't have any sacks, any tackles for loss in that game, they were able to kind of make Washington play into their hands a little bit. And then once they got into the red zone, like you said, they really tightened up. They had 4 trips to the red zone, just 1 touchdown. They had a goal line stand at the start of the second half. And it really is kind of a bend, but don't break defense. Obviously, Washington struggled with missing those field goals. But the coaching's just been tremendous. Joe Harris-Simiak, former defensive coordinator at Minnesota, now at Rutgers, and obviously Shiano's bread and butter on the defensive end. So I think, again, they know how to utilize the personnel. I think they're pretty strong in the secondary, and they don't, although they've missed some tackles more than normal, they're a swarm tackling team, and they haven't given up that big play on a consistent basis that's kept them in games and forced teams to have to convert on third down. And as you mentioned, both Virginia Tech and Washington really struggled in that regard. Washington just 2 of 12.
Yeah. Yep. And do you think that there's going to be some kind of game plan to try to get as much pressure as possible on Raiola? Do you think they're going to try to get creative with their fronts or maybe with some of their stunts or blitz packages? Do you think they're going to try to do that, or you think it's going to be another game plan where they're just trying to keep everything in front of them and leave as many bodies out there as possible, across in the box and on the outsides, and not bring extra pressure, to limit the passing game? How do you think the approach is going to be defensively for Rutgers?
Yeah, I think it'll be different. I mean, Will Rogers, he's so experienced. 5th year, was a 4-year starter at Mississippi State, over 100 touchdowns, 70% accuracy rate in his career.
Yeah.
So I think they played it that way on purpose. I think Raiola, he's very interesting. Obviously, he's super talented. He really has a ton of confidence, and he makes a lot of throws that, he really throws it into the defense, and with those big receivers you have, lets him go and make plays. I think they will, as you touched on, really try to disguise some looks and be able to or try to confuse him a little bit. I think they will. They have sent some secondary blitzes at times, whether it's at corner with longer beam. He got the interception against Virginia Tech on a blitz. They sometimes send Shaquan Loyal or Desmond Igbenusin, 2 of their safeties. They'll send them on blitz packages. So I think they'll definitely, try to mix it up and give him different looks and try to create some mistakes in that for a young quarterback that is supremely talented, but also takes some risks in the passing
Yeah.
game. So, yeah, I think you'll see a definitely different approach in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's kind of, yeah, the wear on him, try to get some hits on him and just make him feel again that physicality, feel that defense. So maybe he's a little less confident in the pocket. Maybe he's a little bit more quote unquote seeing ghosts back there, you know. So because I think when he operates with a clean pocket with the athletes that Nebraska has, you know, that allows them to get open and kind of like you alluded to, he can throw it up to a Jamal Banks who it's not 50-50 balls with him, it's 80-20 balls, you know, and stuff like that. So now moving on to, and I'm going to go back because I forgot to ask about the offensive line earlier, but I want to just touch on special teams real quick because this has also been kind of somewhat of an issue for y'all in terms of, you know, the Washington game. There was actually a field goal blocked, but they had 12 men on the field. And so that gave y'all first down. Now, when in that regard, I don't know if field goal block has been an issue because that could be an instance where they slipped through. But I know overall, I feel like special teams has been a concern for y'all as well. Nebraska will not be able to take advantage of Washington's missed field goals. We can't kick a field goal to save our life either. Our special teams are horrid outside of our punter. So, what's your take on the special teams and how do you think that's going to fare in this game?
Yeah, it's been a little bit shaky. Hasn't been, a killer at any rate, but is a little shaky. Jay Patel, their field goal kicker, was extremely accurate last year. He had a 36-yard miss at Virginia Tech, which really kind of changed that game in terms of the decision making later on. That I think kind of helped Virginia Tech get back into it. Then Shiano had him kick a 53-yarder, which he missed. But then, to his credit, he came in with the game on the line, converted from 25 for that winning score in Virginia Tech. And then, yes, in Washington, it was about a 38-yarder. It was blocked, but called back. They got the first down because of the boneheaded play from Washington. So they got lucky there. I think I still have confidence in him. I think it's still a little too early, just based on this full body of work, to be
Mhm.
overly concerned. But certainly, if he is called upon in Nebraska, that's going to be a huge spot for him. And he is battling a little bit of a mental thing right now in terms of this lack of success he's had so far this year. Punting, we're spoiled. We miss Adam Korsak,
Yeah.
the GOAT. But this year, in terms of Anderson coming from Korsak, actually, coached him in Australia. He's certainly not as pretty, but he's been pretty effective. He really, gets out on the edge there and takes his time, and he's benefited from some rolls, but he's pinned opponents in the 20 a little bit. They haven't given up a lot on the punt return run. They did give up one in each, Virginia Tech and Washington, but overall coverage has been pretty solid. Rutgers is known for blocking kicks on the punts and kicks. They've come close a couple of times, and I know Nebraska's had 3 kicks blocked already. So that certainly is something to watch for, where I think Rutgers is a little bit due to get a block, and that will be key. They have no return game. They really don't even try, to be honest
Mhm.
with you. So that is something that, in terms of this game, this matchup. But yeah, special teams is always, Greg Schiano values it very much. Punting's been solid. Field goal kicking's been a little bit of a concern. So I
Yeah.
know Nebraska's had some struggles there too. So it would be a
Oh
very
yeah.
interesting dynamic. We could see 2 teams that just go for it on 4th down a bunch in this game.
No, yeah, no, Nebraska has. We missed. I think we were 1 for 4 last game too. Alvano was our starting kicker. He got benched, and now we got Hull, who I don't think he's made one beyond 30 yards. So yeah, it's rough sledding because yeah, we have this documentary in Nebraska that they post on the YouTube channel called Chasing Three, and it's fitting because we are chasing 3 constantly. We cannot get 3 points on the board to save our life. So yeah, I'm hoping we go for it at every 4th down in this game. So now just backtracking, and this is kind of the last thing I'll ask, unless you want to give a score prediction at the end, but I wanted to backtrack to the offensive line. I forgot to ask about them. Graded out wise, it seems like they've done much better in the run blocking than the pass blocking. However, it is a big and physical line. They do a good job of getting to the second level quickly. What is What has been the strengths and weaknesses of this offensive line so far? And do you think there's something Nebraska's D line can take advantage of there?
Yeah, it's a big matchup for this offensive line. Pat Flaherty's in his second year. He's basically a legendary offensive line coach, coached with the New York Giants for many years, won 2 Super Bowls there. So it was really a coup for Shiano to get him. And he's done wonders with this line. I mean, Rutgers has struggled with offensive line play their entire tenure in the Big
Mhm.
Ten. And the stability of this line now, all their starters are back for a second year, and they really haven't had any rotation at all. Holland Pierce is a guy that, is going to get drafted on Sundays. 6'8" left tackle, had a huge block in that Sam Brown touchdown run. He's a problem for sure. He's the anchor. But just in terms of the way they go down the line, Brian Felter at left guard, you have Gus Olinkus at center, and then Kobe Asamoah, who's much better at run blocking at that guard spot. And then in terms of Tyler Needham on the right tackle, they've been together a long time now, and you can see that they have a better feel for each other. And also Shiraka and Flats, just in terms of some of the calls they make and some of the blocking they even do, in pass plays, getting out there. They're just very well organized. They don't make mistakes. They're not getting called for penalties in terms of holding or false starts, which was a real problem for Rutgers a couple years ago. So they're steady. They're really good in the run game, but they do, pass blocking can be an issue. So I am concerned about the Nebraska defensive line. It's going to be their biggest test by far. So we'll see what happens there. But they're going to have to be able to generate some type of run game, some type of push and openings for Monungai and obviously Sam Brown in that run game. Because if Rutgers is constantly in third and long and forced to pass, it's going to be a struggle. But overall, Rutgers fans are really pleased with the offensive line and hopeful for more progress as the year goes on.
Yeah, I mentioned that outside zone, in the 3-3-5, attacking the edges is key. And so I think that outside zone is going to be utilized a lot in this game, and then kind of building everything off of that for sure. That's going to be a key in this, and kind of, Nebraska's going to have to get creative with their fronts. You got 3 down linemen. They got to get a little bit more creative in that regard, especially against a tough O line, one of the toughest we faced this year. So, but yeah, man, do you want to give a score prediction, or do you have one kind of thought up, or
I will say this. I'm not big on score predictions, if you don't mind, but I'll say this in
not at
terms of
all?
Rutgers. I think what gives Rutgers fans hope in this game is that Nebraska has some very clear areas they've struggled with that have been strengths for Rutgers. So,
Yeah,
in terms of limiting mistakes, the big thing with this team that's been different is not that they're just limiting their own mistakes, is that they're actually able to capitalize on opponent mistakes. That's
yeah,
something that in the past, they really, last year even, they weren't able to do as much. So they were able to get out to big starts against Virginia Tech and Washington, 14-0 against Virginia Tech, 14-3 Washington, both because of key mistakes, penalties, turnovers from those teams that allowed Rutgers to take advantage and get out into it. Mentioned that missed field goal that got called back because of a penalty. 2 plays later, they throw a touchdown pass. That's
yeah,
something that, as
mhm,
Rutgers fans, we're not used to. So,
yeah,
in terms of limiting mistakes, converting on third down, 51% for the season, 17th nationally, the 5th fewest penalty yards in the country, and number 2 red zone defense. So those are really the nuts and bolts of how they can win this
mhm,
game. It's keeping it close. If Rutgers can jump out to a lead, that's going to just play into the game plan of what they want to do. We haven't seen this team have to come back yet. So if they give up some early plays, make some key mistakes early in this game, I think obviously it's going to be tough for them to overcome that at Nebraska. Tough place to play. Thinking of 2 years ago when Rutgers kind of had that game and blew it against Nebraska, we're hoping they're
yep,
due to kind of get some payback there. But I think in terms of what Rutgers wants to do and does do well, and Nebraska kind of has struggled, with close games for a couple years now, or more than that. Don't want to rub it in at all, but just in terms of knowing that about Nebraska, I feel like if this is a close game down the stretch, Rutgers, they know how to win those games, and they've
yeah,
been able to step up on all 3 units with the game on the line. So that's
yeah,
encouraging. But again, if Nebraska wins 31-14, would not surprise me at all. I think it's
mhm,
limiting those big plays and being able to execute in the pass game and time of possession, of course, is always what Rutgers wants to do.
Yeah.
They need to have the ball. If Nebraska has it 35 minutes and, Raiola has 300 plus yards, it's probably not going to be a good outcome.
Yeah. Was it Noah Vedral that was the quarterback in that game? Is it,
Uh,
was it
Noah
I can't
Vedral,
remember.
he actually got hurt in that game. Gavin Wimsatt was in that game. Noah
Yeah, okay.
Vedral, yeah, he was hurt, I believe.
Because
Yeah,
he transferred from Nebraska over, so that was
yeah,
very interesting. Yeah.
and that was his last year. I know Noah was hurt for the year before when Nebraska came. That season
Mhm.
finale was at 21 or 20. It was
I
the
think
COVID
it's
year, I think.
21. Oh,
Yeah,
was 20?
I can't remember. Yeah, it's all blurry.
I don't know.
But yeah, Vedral was, we like Vedral. He was solid.
Yeah,
He definitely was a positive for the early years of Shiano 2.0.
for sure.
Yeah, that was that game after they lost to Nebraska 2 years ago. They fired offensive coordinator Sean Gleason.
Mm.
So that led to change there. So we're happy about that. But yeah, I'm
Yep.
still hoping we can get that win back.
Absolutely. And speaking of your game plan for Rutgers, mine was for Nebraska's playing right into what you said. I said the biggest key for Nebraska is to get out to an early lead and
Mhm.
force y'all to try to have to throw the downfield and force you out of your game. And I think that's the only way we win this game, of course, just because if we play into your hand with Nebraska right now, I don't feel like we have an offensive identity. I don't feel like we are a chew clock type of team, but I also, it seems there's no rhyme or reason sometimes for kind of how the offense operates. It seems like they don't know when to kind of slow it down. So hopefully Nebraska's offense can find some kind of identity and control the game in this one. But looking forward to it, man. My score prediction, I said if Rutgers wins, I think it'll be close. I think if it's a double digit win, I think it would be Nebraska. But I think Nebraska wins this in a close one. I'm going to go 27-24, and we'll see what happens, because it's one-score games. I feel like I want it to be a one-score game to get that 800-pound gorilla. I recorded with Big Ten Ted yesterday, and we both kind of said that, like, it might be good if it's a one-score win at home to get that monkey off of our back for sure. So, but
Yeah,
anything else
I
before?
agree with you. I think, and it would be good too to do that against Rutgers, a team that does win close games. That would be
Yeah,
kind of an extra, added bonus to that. But yeah, I think for Rutgers, if they win, it's going to be close. If they lose, I could see them losing by multiple scores. So
yeah,
I think this is definitely their biggest test of the season by far as well. Having that extra day of rest could help as well. So
yeah.
we'll see, but certainly their farthest road trip of the year as well.
For sure. And I will say, Rutgers fans, I am a fan of Rutgers whenever y'all aren't playing Nebraska. So y'all are fine by me. But Aaron, thank you so much again for coming on. Again, would you want to tell the people where they can find you one more time?
Yeah, it's a Scarlet Faithful podcast, on all major podcast platforms and on YouTube. My channel, it's Scarlet Faithful, Aaron Brightman, and I'm on Twitter as well, Aaron_Brightman. And yeah, appreciate you having me on. Always good to talk to you. And should be a great game on Saturday.
Absolutely. And we'll be doing a preview on his channel as well. So y'all get over there and check that out as well. So thank you again, Aaron. Links will be in the description. Like I said before, also an announcement, the Big Ten show. We will be live Saturday during the Rutgers-Nebraska game for a live watch party. So if y'all want to tune into that, go ahead and check it out. We'll be there watching along. And look forward to seeing everybody there. But that'll do it for me here. And I will see you on the next video. Peace.